Hello there everyone. Welcome to my channel. This is Jason. This channel is a one-stop resource for anyone who is trying to crack the interview of a Scrum Master or learn new things as a Scrum Master. So if you are someone who is preparing to become a Scrum Master, who is already a Scrum Master, trying to give interviews, Agile Coach interviews, the content that you find on this channel can help you in your journey. My goal is to make this channel a one-stop shop for anyone who is trying to become a Scrum Master and is going for an interview. The questions that you will find here are based on my experience, on the candidates that I have interviewed, and on the content that I have seen so in my years of experience in the industry that get asked from aspirant Scrum Masters. So with that said, let's get started with our first video. The first video, we are going to discuss some questions. I'm going to give you guys the answers. The questions are laid out on the screen. We're going to go through them one by one, and then I'm going to give you guys the answers to those questions. The first question, tell us a little bit about yourself. So when an interviewer is asking you this question, what they're trying to assess is your experience. What they're trying to assess is your professional experience in your professional life as a Scrum Master. And without experience, this Scrum Master role is someplace where it's almost hard to impossible to enter. So you need some sort of experience as a business analyst or something that you can show to your interviewer when they are asking you this question. So focus on that. So when they are asking you, tell us a little bit about yourself. So you can say things like, okay, my name is John. I've been working in this industry for over 6 years, 7 years. I started out as an intern with so and so company. I'm then moved on to this company, so and so company, where I functioned in this role. I then moved on to this, my current company, where I'm functioning in this role. And in my current role, we are doing all the Scrum ceremonies from daily stand-ups to sprint retros to sprint demos to sprint planning to product backlog grooming, and I am facilitating meetings with the team. I am facilitating meetings with the product owner, the stakeholders, showcasing the progress of the team to the stakeholders. I am being present in facilitating all the meetings that are required for us to reach our sprint goal in an iterative process according to the Scrum methodology. So basically, let's take a step back. When they are asking you, tell us a little bit about yourself, the first 2 minutes of an interview decides the course of the interview. If you are confident within the first 2 minutes of the interview, they will be impressed and they will slow down or they will not go hard on you. But if the interviewer smells blood within the first 2 minutes of the interview, then it'll be very hard for you to crack that interview. So be confident during the first 2 minutes of the interview. And when I say be confident, I mean practice what you are going to say multiple times before you go into the interview. So when they ask you, tell us a little bit about yourself, you have to show them that you know your stuff. And how do you show them? You talk about common words. You talk about the proper words like sprint ceremonies, sprint demos, sprint reviews, sprint retros, product owner, development team, DevOps team, testing team. You have to use these words to make them believe in you that, okay, this guy, he knows his stuff. Okay, so when they ask you, tell us a little bit about yourself, you have to talk about the common words that are used in a Scrum team, in an Agile team on a daily basis. So, for example, like, okay, I facilitate all these meetings. I help remove impediments for the team. Whatever the impediments the team is facing, I remove them. If there are any blockers, I help remove those blockers to make sure the team reaches its sprint goals. Okay, those are some of the things I do on a daily basis. Also, I have one-on-one with the team members to see how they're feeling, how they're doing, and things like that. These are some of the examples that you can tell them, okay, this is what I'm doing in my daily role. So that is what you have to answer when they ask you a little bit about yourself. My name is John. I started out my journey working as an intern here and here. I then became a Scrum Master for this company, did this much time there. I then became a Scrum Master for my next company, did this much time there. And in my current role, I am conducting all the sprint ceremonies, sprint retro, sprint demo, this and this. I help the team create documentation. I measured the velocity of the team using sprint burn down charts on a Jira board. I help the product owner with backlog grooming. I facilitate meetings like sprint planning and things like that. You have to use those words. You have to use those common words. Okay, now let's move on to the next question. So the next question is, how do you assess the Scrum maturity of your team? So with this question, the interviewer is trying to assess your depth of the Scrum framework, your experience, your depth of the actual framework and actual experience. Okay, so how do you assess the Scrum maturity of your team? When you are asked this question, you play it with a scenario basis. You say it on a scenario basis answer. In my current team, the way I assess the Scrum maturity of my team is by seeing how transparent they are, how happy the customer is. In some companies, they have Net Promoter Scores, NPS score for customers, where the customer can rate how happy they are with the development product. So I assess the maturity of the team by how transparent they are, if they are meeting their sprint goal, how much work they are committing, and how much work they are actually achieving. If the team is not facing any challenges, internal conflicts, or anything like that, and sprint goals are achieved on a regular basis, the team is doing well with velocity, it's either increasing over time, we are managing our technical debt smartly, and the team is self-organizing, they can assign the work themselves, they can make their own decisions most of the time. Nobody needs to step in and tell them what to do. That is how I measure the Scrum maturity of my team. Those are some of the ways I measure the Scrum maturity of my team. So basically, the main mission of a Scrum Master is to build self-organizing, high value producing teams. Okay, so the team that is most self-organizing, that can produce the most value in the shortest amount of time, is the most is the best team, and the Scrum Master of that team is the best Scrum Master. So that is how you tell them, okay, the team is making all the decisions by itself in the sprint planning, nobody has to step in, the team can assign all the work by themselves. If a scrum master, I'm on vacation, the velocity doesn't go down by a lot, it goes down by a little bit because someone has to act as a scrum master and facilitate all the daily meetings and all, but it doesn't go down by a significant amount. The team can function properly in my absence as well. So that is how you assess the maturity of the team. Okay, those are some of the examples that you can give when they ask you, how do you assess the scrum maturity of your team? Now, moving on to the third question. You have completed the work of the sprint in 2 days before the sprint is over, and the PO wants to put more work. What do you do? So, this can also be asked as, have you ever had a situation where the product owner wants to put more work on the team during or create scope creep? Scope creep is when the product owner gives more stories within the sprint. So, what do you do in situations like that when the scope creep is happening and it's being done by the product owner? So, in a situation like this, you have to again answer it in some sorts of scenario so that the interviewer can feel, okay, yeah, this guy has or this girl has experience, and he knows what he's talking about. So when you and they ask you, have you when a product owner is trying to create scope creep, what do you do? So in this situation, you say, okay, as a scrum master, I sit down with the product owner. I try to understand where he's coming from. Uh, if this is more important, if this provides more value to the customer, the story and what he thinks about it, show empathy with the product owner and see where he's coming from. Why is he introducing it in the middle of the sprint? And if it's very, very important, it's more value to the customer, it's very, very important for the sprint, then I add it to the sprint, but we also have to remove something from the sprint because the velocity of the team is only so much, right? That you have calculated in the beginning of the sprint. You cannot push the team more, right? So I add the story that he's trying to tell me if it's very important, it gives more value to the customer, but I remove something as well so that the velocity doesn't, so that team, uh, so it doesn't overflow the capacity. Team doesn't get overcommitted and then fail to reach their goal. So I add that, but then I remove something also of the same story points as compared to what is being added to the scope. And if this happens over and over, then I like to sit down with the product owner and remind him of the working agreement. So whenever Whenever you are working with a team, remember this word, right? Written working agreement. Working agreement is like a set of framework rules of how everyone will conduct, how the developers will conduct themselves on the team, how testers will conduct themselves on the team, how you will conduct yourself on the team, how product owner will conduct himself on the team. So when you start working at a new place, when you're meeting a product owner, you build up a working agreement. Okay, this is how it's going to go. You're not going to create scope creep. If it's really, really important, then we can do it. We can remove something else and all. These are the things that you discuss with the product owner when you start working at a place. Okay, so when the product owner is trying to create scope creep, if it's happening over and over, okay, sit down with the product owner and explain to him the working agreement that you had, that well you started. Okay, this is not going to happen, and this is what we discussed, and this is creating actually, this is creating problems for the team because the team is getting distracted, and it might affect the velocity of the team also in the long term. So you have to sit down with the product owner, explain to him your side, explain to him your pain, and then try to understand where he is coming from. And this is how you have to resolve this problem, by getting down to a working agreement. And if this happens over and over, if this happens once in a while, it's okay, remove something, put that in there, and make sure it's giving more value to the customer than what you are removing, and then discuss it with the development team and see what they say, and then go along with it. So this is how you would answer this question. Make it based on a scenario. Okay, in my company, this happened, and I actually understood the product owner where he's coming from, and I let it happen, and I removed something comparable to that amount of story points from the scope and added this one. If it happens again and again, I'll sit down, I'll have a conversation, remind him of the working agreement that we had, and we will go from there. So that's how you will answer this question. Now moving on to the next question. When you are a new Scrum Master in a team, what is the first thing that you do? Okay, so this question can be asked in multiple different ways. So the one way that it can ask is, okay, so you are starting in a new company as a new Scrum Master. What will you do? Okay, what's going to be your first 30-day process? What's going to be your first 90-day process? What's going to be your game plan? Okay, so how you answer this question is, you say, okay, when I am starting in a company fresh and new, the first 7 days I just observe. I just observe how the process is done, how the backlog is groomed, how the team is working on the sprints, how everybody's participating in the retros. I sit through all the ceremonies, and if there is no other Scrum Master, yes, I facilitate them. I observe. The first 7 to 14 days is just observation. Once I have done that, and or for example, you can also say that, first when I go into an organization, my goal is just to observe for the first 1 or 2 sprints how the team conducts their business, right? And for that observation, if I have to make sure that there is enough backlog items that can be groomed with the acceptance, enough backlog items in the backlog that have acceptance criteria attached to them, and the product owner has done his part and they are ready to be groomed, and we have enough material for 2 sprints. Then I facilitate the sprint planning meeting, get that groomed, and let the developers start working on the sprints. Then I observe how the team functions and how everything is done. So okay, let's when you are a new Scrum Master, what do you do? First of all, I go in there and I figure out who is who. Who is the developer? Who is the tester? Who is the UI designer? Who is this? Who is that? Who is the product owner? Who is the stakeholders? Who is the most important stakeholder? Who are the fellow Scrum Masters? Uh, who is who? Okay. First, I find that out. Who is who? The second thing I do is I make sure that we have enough backlog items for 2 sprints to be groomed, ready to be groomed. Okay. Once I do that, then I observe how everything is done for the first 2 weeks. Once our 2 weeks are up, and I facilitate all the ceremonies, the sprint planning, the retros, and all that, to see who talks and who how the team functions and how they are operating in different environments, what kind of process they are following, and what is what. Okay, after 2 weeks, once I have made my observations, based on those observations, I set up a working agreement with the product owner, with the development team, with the people. Identify all the major stakeholders, update them on the progress, and so on and so forth. So first, I find out who is who. Second, I make sure that we have enough backlog items to start the sprints. If not, then I work with the product owner and get the backlog items groomed, get them attached to the acceptance criteria so that we can start the sprint planning. And then we start the sprint planning. We work with the development team. I facilitate all the Scrum ceremonies and observe. First 2 weeks is just pure observation, and based on those observations, I come up with a working agreement of how um, you know how I think set up a basic set of framework and rules that um, how things can be done and how things can operate. And based on that, I work. Based on those observations, I go ahead. So that is what you can say when they ask you how you will start in a new team. Now, next question is, how do you work with stakeholders? Now, this is a really good question. It can also be asked in different ways. Okay, how do you work with difficult stakeholders? How do you work with irritating stakeholders? How do you work with stakeholders um, who are not so nice, who just difficult? Okay, how do you work with those people? Give us an example. So in this case, you can start with a scenario-based situation. Okay, in my current job, in my current role, I keep my stakeholders in the loop with the progress of the sprint. And again, these things they can change along with the contract, along with the location, along with the organization, whatever type of contract you have with the business owners and the stakeholders. Generally, it's the product owner's responsibility to deal most of the time, but depends on the contract and depends on the relationship, how it's done. But most often, you can say that in my current role, with the stakeholders, I try to keep them in the loop with the progress of the sprint planning, the backlog items, whatever we have discussed on, and what we are going to move ahead with. Try to keep them in the loop. And during the sprint demo, facilitate the sprint demo, sit down with the stakeholders, try to make sure that the development team is being heard, make sure that the stakeholders are being heard. This is how I work with the stakeholders. And you can also say like, okay, if the stakeholders like to introspect or try to push something on the team during the development, during the sprint demo, then I might work with I might discuss the product owner and see if what discussed was is shared in the sprint demo. Okay, this is what we discussed, this is what the definition of done was, and this is what we are working on, and this is what the result is. So communication, basically. Communication based on the contract, what type of contract you have, based on that communication. Okay, it's it's not like it's not like when you're working with difficult stakeholder, it's not like there is anything personal. The main purpose is to get to reach the sprint goal, to produce good software. The main mission, the main goal is to produce good software in the shortest amount of time, to produce the most value. Okay, so it's not like you have anything in personal with the stakeholder, difficult stakeholder or anything. So if issues come up with the stakeholder, have a good communication, have one-on-one, discuss your pain points, discuss your side, discuss the development team side, and then try to understand where he's coming from, show empathy towards his pain, and then try to work out a working agreement and see, have a conversation, have them sit down with the development team, have a conversation with the development team, and see how everything plays out. It's not like you have anything personal. So when this question is asked, how do you work with difficult stakeholders? Okay. When I'm facing in my current role, if I'm facing difficult stakeholders, I try to understand where they're coming from, what's their pain point, and I try to show our side as well, our pain points as well. Have a good try to have a good communication. Try to facilitate a good meeting with the development team and with ourselves to show our side and what we are thinking and what was communicated before, and based on that we go. Okay, that is how you can answer this question. How do you deal with the team member who does not see the value of Scrum? Okay, now this, believe it or not, it can be a very common scenario in Scrum teams. So, and this can be a very common question as well. So it can be asked in multiple different ways. How do you deal with a difficult team member? How do you deal with a senior team member? How do you deal with the if you are a if you're a junior Scrum Master? How do you deal with the developer, developer who's bullying junior developers, or who is like taking over the meetings and answering all the answers for the other developers, who's taking cherry picking the work, who's not doing his part? So it can be asked in multiple different scenarios, but The answer comes down to one simple root answer, which I'll give it to you right now. So how do you deal with the team member who does not see the value of Scrum? Okay, so go with the scenario based answer. In my current team, we have a senior developer. She does not want to attend the meetings, or she is trying to bully the junior developers, does not want to do the work with the junior developers in pair programming teams, or she doesn't want to share her knowledge of legacy code with the other team members. Multiple situations, okay, multiple situations. How do you deal with conflict with a team member as a Scrum Master? So you first of all realize that you don't have anything personal with any damn body, okay? You're just there to get the work done. You are just there to make sure the team produces software, they produce value, they produce good they produce good working software, and they work in collaborations, and they follow all the Scrum principles. It's nothing personal to you, okay? How do you deal with it is, okay, if a Scrum member team doesn't see value in Scrum processes, I will try to have one-on-one with her, try to understand where she is coming from, what are her pain points. Mostly 60-70% of the time, this will resolve the situation. When you try to empathize with her, what are her pain points, show her your pain points. Okay, if you do not do this, the team is lagging behind, they might not meet our sprint goal, and so on and so forth. Show her your pain as well, try to understand her pain, his pain, and most of the time that will solve the situation. But even then, if he doesn't understand, then you can follow with the different route, like, okay, and try to show them the value of Scrum. Or you can say, okay, let's do it your way. You don't want to be part of the Scrum team, you don't want to attend daily ceremonies. Okay, that's fine. No need to come to the Scrum meetings. We will do the Scrum meetings as per normal, because that is company guideline, and so on and so forth. We will do the Scrum ceremonies as per normal, and I will share with you the results of those Scrum ceremonies. Okay, and whatever we assign the work to you, you will do that work, and it will all be communicated with you through email. Okay, and you do that with them, silo them from the team, and communicate with them through emails, assign them work through emails. And generally what will happen is a team member will start complaining, okay, this is this and this and that. So then you can say, okay, you are the one who chose this way, you don't want to be part of Scrum ceremonies, and then so this is how we are going to deal with you, right? If you want to be part of Scrum ceremonies, you want to be part of the team, if you want to have a say in things, then come join the Scrum ceremonies, right? So this is some way you can answer the question. Okay, in my current situation, there is a programmer, she doesn't want, there is a developer, she doesn't want to be part of the team, so I try to coach her one-on-one, show her my pain points, understand her pain points, show empathy towards her cause, and then try to work it out that way, build a trusting relationship over time, and it worked out fine. But if it does, it in one situation it didn't work out, and I had to silo the person from the team, and he after some time started sharing work with him and through emails, and after some time he felt kind of left out, and he felt kind of bad that he was being left out, and he was not discussed for anything. And then in that case I discussed with him, okay, you were the one who didn't like the Scrum ceremony, so there's this and that, and then generally, and then he decided to come back and start following all the Scrum ceremonies and all that, and he saw the value in that. Okay, now there is a good way, there is a good process, that when you answer this question, you also answer it in a bifocal way. Bifocal way, I mean, you not only put the spotlight on the team member, you also put the spotlight on the Scrum Master. Okay, maybe there is something as a Scrum Master that you are not doing right. So when you answer this question, first you start by, okay, if a team member is saying these things, first I will start by looking inside me. Maybe as a Scrum Master, I am not communicating value after every Scrum ceremony. Okay, from a daily stand-up, what value did we gain today? From a retrospective, what value did we gain today? Who is going to follow up on those values? Who is going to follow up on those action points? So first start with you. Okay, I will see if I am communicating the value of every ceremony after every ceremony to the team members clearly. Okay, this is the value we gained from this ceremony. This is the value we gained from this ceremony, so that they are not feeling that they are just attending meetings left and right. they're just getting slapped against the wall without getting any value, right? They have to feel like, okay, we gained some value from this, we gained some value from that. Okay, so as Scrum Master, you have to start by answering this question like, okay, first I will make sure that I personally am making sure that after every Scrum ceremony, the team is getting communicated all the values that was delivered from that Scrum ceremony, the team gained, the sprint process gained from that Scrum ceremony. If I'm doing that right, and even if after that the employee is complaining, then I will go ahead and say, okay, I'll have one-on-one. And then if it doesn't work out that way, I will try to silo the person and so on and so forth. Okay, this is the best way to answer this question, and you can modify it according to your scenario. If you already worked as a Scrum Master, how you'll do it. If you haven't worked as a Scrum Master, you can kind of tweak it in your own little language. I have given you the basics. You can try to build up a foundation on that, and tweak it in your own language, which is more comfortable with you. Okay, now moving on to the next question. An example of your most recent sprint planning. What value did the team get out of it? Okay, so in this, the interviewer can ask it in different ways. He can ask you for sprint planning. For me, generally, we ask for daily scrum. We ask for sprint retros. Generally, most common is daily scrum and sprint retros. And you can, in the next video, I will also make it on daily scrum, sprint retro, sprint demo. On every ceremony, I'll make a question, but this particular one is for sprint planning. Okay, what value did the team get out of it? Okay, and this can also be asked, okay, what challenge did you face in that ceremony? What problem did we solve in the ceremony? So you have to have like a real life, like a view of particular ceremony and particular scenario and particular example. Make sure you prepare those before you go for the interview. For every ceremony, every example, you have to be able to talk about it. So this one is for sprint planning. So you can say in our most recent sprint planning, um, we actually were able to I as a scrum master, I facilitated the meetings. The team was working on different stories, and they were able to build those user stories according to the invest criteria, which is they have to be small enough, they have to be negotiable, they have to be independent, they have to be testable. You can read up on the invest criteria. What is invest criteria for user stories? I'll make a video on that as well. So we made sure they're small enough and they are vertically sliced in a proper way where they can be worked on independently. They may match the capacity of the team, and um, you know um, that is what I facilitated and as a scrum master. And then the value that the team got out of this sprint planning was just they were able to get a clear vision, clear idea of what they have to work on. What's the product? They had a clear idea of the definition of done, very clearly defined definition of done. And yeah, that's what the value the team got out of this sprint planning. So with this, they're trying to understand, okay, do you have an understanding of sprint planning? What are the pros? What are the things and this and that? Basically trying to understand your depth of knowledge. That's how you can answer it. Okay, with this sprint planning, we were able to vertically slice the stories in very small numbers according to the invest framework. We were able to clearly define the definition of done for each story. The team had a clear vision of what they have to do. And I, as a scrum master, I facilitated the meeting. After the when the meeting was about to be over, I asked the team, okay, do you guys have a clear definition of what you have to do in the sprint? Do you have a clear definition of what you're working on? And made sure the work was assigned properly and team was not cherry picking. Those are the things that you can say in this one. How do you make sure stories are good for a sprint? Okay, we talked about it in the previous question as well, but let's discuss it again. How do you make sure stories are good for a sprint? So you can say, as a scrum master, it's I facilitate the sprint planning meeting, and the team actually decides to cut the stories. Team and the product owner, they work together to cut the stories in vertical slices that meet the definition of um, invest criteria. And basically they have to be independent, they have to be testable, they have to be small enough for people to work on. They must have a clear definition of done, a clear acceptance criteria. The person working on the story has to understand what he's working on, and so on and so forth. So you can say that, okay, as a Scrum Master, I ask the team members, okay, if the stories that they're working on or that they have assigned meet the invest criteria, they have clear definition of done, and the developer that's working on the story, he understands what he's working on, and so on and so forth. You can answer this question as well. What are the some of the ways? What are some of the ways you increase the productivity of your team as a Scrum Master? So this is a very interesting question, and this can be asked in multiple different ways as well. So it can be asked like, okay, what are some of the ways you increase the velocity of your team as a Scrum Master, or you help a team that was not achieving its goals? How do you help the team to get back on the track, the team that was committing too much or team that was committing too less, or the team, how did you help a team to increase productivity? How did you help a team that was not meeting its goal put it back on the track and start meeting its goals? How did you do that? These are some of the ways this question can be asked. So how do you answer this question? So the best way to go about is, okay, if the team, if I have to increase the productivity of the team as a Scrum Master, I brought it up in the retrospective, um, and I let the team discuss around it. Okay, what are the best ways we can increase the productivity of the team? Okay, can we manage our technical debt better? Okay, can we manage our can we do anything else that we are not doing right now that can be done? Can we strengthen our retrospective? Can we so basically bring it up with the retro, how we can improve the productivity of your team. What are the issues that the team is facing, these challenges they're not able to meet their goals, or they are not able to increase their productivity? And so what the interviewer is trying to understand is, how do you motivate the team? How do you grow the team? If the team already has reached a saturation level of the team, is trying to meet its goals on time and all that, how do you do that as a Scrum Master? So you go about by facilitating the retro. In my current team, I facilitated a retro. I asked the team, okay, what are the points that we are doing that we can improve on? Okay, what are some of the things that we are doing wrong right now that we can improve on, that can increase our productivity? Okay, sometimes it can be related to the definition of done. The team doesn't have a clear idea of what's the definition of done, and they're guessing and they're shooting arrows in the air, and that is taking a lot of their time. The team is guessing the goals, team is being vague about things, and it's wasting a lot of time. The work is getting done, but then they have to work on it again because they are not clear on what it has to produce, what's the end result supposed to be. So having a clear definition of done, making sure the team is managing its technical debt in a smart way. Okay, it's being placed in the backlog, but in a smart way. Okay, um, um, properly calculating the capacity of the team. Okay, and then having some buffer space at the end of the sprint, like 1 day or 2 days, for bugs, for test results, and also those sort of things. Okay, and then having a cross-functioning team. Okay, not having a single point of failure. Like for example, if you have a person who does legacy code, make sure that he's cross-functioning and he's cross-training and he's pair programming with some other team member, so that there is not one single point of failure. If that person calls out or goes on a vacation, the work doesn't stop. The work keeps on going. The velocity team, it doesn't happen that the team doesn't reach its goal because of one person. Okay, don't have single point of failure. Having pair programming practices, cross functioning teams. Okay, what other ways you can automate automate the nowadays Jira, it has some non-technical automation tools, it has some technical automation tools as well in Jenkins. So automate the process as much as you can, automate the testing process as much as you can, automate the non-technical parts of the process as much as you can. Okay, find ways to increase collaboration among the team. Again, building cross-functioning teams, pair programming, increasing transparency among the team. Okay, make sure the team is documenting things on time so that wherever everyone is standing, everyone knows, and then they can go from there. Identify the common bottlenecks in the process. Okay, is it the people, is it the process, or is it the product? What are the common bottlenecks that you see in your team? Again, the team decides in the retro, but you can help them. You can ask them, okay, what are the bottlenecks because of which we are not meeting our goals, or because of which our velocity is not increasing? So these are some of the examples that you can share. Okay, in my current team, to increase our velocity, or our team was not reaching its goals. So to help the team reach our goals, we analyzed the capacity better. We brought it up in the retrospective. What are the problems we can solve to increase our velocity? Let the team discuss on it. And the team came up with solutions. Okay, we can manage our technical debt better. We can have a clear definition of done so the team members are not left guessing. Okay, we can have a cross-functioning team so we don't have a single point of failure. We can automate the testing process. We can automate the non-technical processes. We increase the collaboration and transparency among the teams. So this is some of the ways that you can increase the velocity and the productivity of your team. Okay, this is how you can answer it based on an actual scenario. Now moving on to the next question. Give an example of an impediment you have resolved as a Scrum Master. Now, with this question, they're trying to see what's your real life field experience. Okay, so for example, you can give an example. Okay, in my current team, the team was not able to access the team was not able to access the servers. They entered the wrong password. The team was blocked out, so I had to call the back office in IT department and get it resolved. And I also made sure that I emailed the team and gave them the number so that next time this happens, they can call them directly and they don't have to wait for me. So it can be as simple as that, or it can be something like, okay, you know we had um we had a team member who called out, who went on sick leave in the middle of the process, and so that we didn't know what he was working on. He didn't communicate well with the team, so that was also impediment that the team had. So you know so for that impediment, our work was stalled, but then he came back and then we started working again. And so I made sure that next time this happens, everybody who's working on something, they document their work better so that everybody else knows what everybody is working on, so that when somebody goes on a leave or calls out, we are not like, we don't get left stuck because of one person. Something like that. Those are some of the impediments that you can mention from your real life example. Or if you don't have a real life example, you can, try to make something up. Okay, what are the impediments that you can solve for the team as a Scrum Master? Okay, you can try to visualize and imagine. Okay, like, okay, team member went on vacation, we did this and that. Okay, and then like, okay, the team got blocked out, or we had an issue with the server. The team didn't have any server, so I communicated with the management team. Get some borrowed a server, or something like that. Those are some of the scenarios that you can come up with, and I will make more videos on this channel about these questions and about these scenarios. Please stick around, subscribe, like and subscribe to the channel if you find value in this content. Again, this is Jason. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.